Our family vacation was supposed to be a chance to relax and reconnect. But what happened at that hotel changed everything. It started the moment we arrived. My daughter-in-law Lauren snapped at the hotel clerk shouting, "Don't speak to the old lady. She's just the maid." And my son Daniel burst out laughing like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. She had no idea that the hotel was mine. What I did after that left her in absolute panic. I'm glad you're here to hear the full story. Stick with me to the end, and drop a comment letting me know which city you're watching from. And subscribe. I'd looked forward to that trip for months. At 72, it's not often I get quality time with Daniel and his family. When he suggested we spend a week together in Santa Bella Beach, my heart filled with hope. Maybe this would be my chance to finally connect with Lauren, who had kept her distance ever since they got married 5 years ago. It took us 4 hours to get to the Seabreeze Grand Resort, and I spent nearly the whole drive sitting quietly in the back seat while Daniel and Lauren chatted about their plans. They were all excited about spa appointments, golf tee times, and fancy dinners, acting like I wasn't even there. I tried to chime in, asked about the grandkids, suggested maybe we do something together. But Lauren gave me cold, clipped replies and Daniel didn't say a word. I should have noticed the red flags right then, but I wanted so badly to feel close to my family I brushed it off. What they didn't know is that the Seabreeze Grand was one of the crown jewels of my hotel business. I built everything I have from scratch after my husband passed when Daniel was just 12. I started with a tiny bed and breakfast, working 18-hour days, cleaning rooms myself, taking calls, handling every little thing until I grew that single property into 17 resorts across 3 states. Still, I always kept my business life separate. I wanted my son to love me for me, not for my money. As we pulled up to the grand front entrance, I felt proud. The landscaping was flawless and valets in crisp uniforms rushed to help arriving guests. It had taken me 3 years just to buy the land and another 2 to renovate it into what it was now, perfect. I handpicked everything from the marble floors to the sparkling crystal chandeliers. Daniel handed off the car keys to the valet while Lauren, in her big designer sunglasses, adjusted her sleek blonde hair. I'll admit she looked stunning, the type of polish that only comes from personal trainers and high-end salons. At 35, she was 20 years younger than my son and loved reminding everyone of it. "Make sure we get the penthouse suite," she told Daniel as we walked in. "I don't care what they say, just get it done." And just like always, he nodded and followed her lead. It broke my heart a little, seeing how the strong, confident boy I raised had turned into a man who couldn't make a move without her approval. Inside, the lobby buzzed with activity, familiar and beautiful. I couldn't help but smile. As we approached the front desk, I spotted Stephanie, the front desk manager. Her eyes widened when she saw me, but I gave her a tiny shake of my head. I wasn't ready to let anyone know who I really was. Not yet. "Good afternoon," she said smoothly. "Welcome to Seabreeze Grand. How can I help you?" "Reservation under Whitaker," Daniel said. "We're supposed to have the penthouse suite." Stephanie typed quickly, then looked up. "You're confirmed for our deluxe ocean view suite, Mr. Whitaker." "I'm sorry, but the penthouse is already booked for the entire week." Lauren's face darkened. I saw her jaw clench as frustration built beneath her flawless makeup. "That's not acceptable," she snapped. "Do you know who we are? I asked for that suite when we made the reservation." Stephanie kept her calm, though I could see tension creeping into her shoulders. "I'm very sorry for the misunderstanding, Mrs. Whitaker. The deluxe suite is beautiful and comes with its own private." "Don't tell me about some second-rate room," Lauren interrupted, her voice rising so loud it turned heads in the lobby. "I want the penthouse and I want it now." I stepped forward slightly, hoping to calm her down. "Lauren, maybe we could," but I didn't get to finish. That's when it all fell apart. She spun toward me, her face twisted with fury. "Don't you dare speak," she shouted, loud enough to echo off the marble walls. Then she turned to Stephanie. "Whatever your name is, don't listen to this old woman. She's no one important. Just the help we dragged along." The entire lobby went silent. Conversations stopped and people turned to watch. My cheeks burned as shame surged through me like a wave. But Lauren wasn't finished. "Don't even talk to her," she yelled, pointing at me like I was dirt. "She's just the maid. Maybe the babysitter. Don't waste your time." I stood there stunned. My mouth was dry and my heart pounded so hard I thought I might collapse. In 72 years I'd never been talked to like that. Not by anyone and certainly not in front of a crowd. But what came next hurt even more. Daniel laughed. Not a nervous laugh or something awkward. He laughed hard, the kind of laugh that shakes your whole body. "Oh, Lauren," he said, wiping tears from his eyes, "you're awful. But you're not wrong. Mom, just let us handle this, okay? Go sit down somewhere." Felt like a punch to the gut. This was my son. The one I raised by myself. The one I sacrificed everything for. And he was laughing while his wife humiliated me. Stephanie's face had gone pale. She looked at me with shock and sympathy, and that somehow made it worse. I could hear whispers around the lobby. Some folks had pulled out their phones, probably filming the whole thing. "Ma'am," Stephanie said gently, "maybe you'd like to wait in the lounge while we sort things out?" I didn't even get a word in before Lauren let out a dramatic sigh. "Yes, please take the old lady somewhere she won't embarrass us and make sure someone watches her. She tends to wander." Daniel chuckled again, and all I could hear was more laughing, more strangers staring, and more little pieces of my heart breaking. All I wanted to do was run away, from that elegant lobby, from my cruel daughter-in-law, from my son who thought my pain was funny. But something in me held firm. The strength I'd built this empire with, it didn't leave me. I stood tall, picked up my little suitcase and walked toward the elevator. My spine stayed straight even though my spirit felt crushed. Behind me, Lauren kept yelling at Stephanie, her voice full of the kind of entitlement that only people who've never worked a day in their lives seem to carry. Just before the elevator doors closed, I caught Stephanie's eye. She gave me the tiniest nod, like she understood, like she was waiting for my signal. I had built everything with my own hands. I had over 300 employees working at my hotels. I was respected, admired for my fairness. But at that moment, none of it mattered. I was just an old woman getting shouted at by her daughter-in-law while her son laughed. The elevator climbed to the 12th floor, and with each number that lit up, something inside me shifted. I still felt hurt, deeply. But something new had started growing. Determination. The next morning I woke up to a view that should have felt like paradise. But instead it felt like a prison. My room faced the ocean. The waves rolled in gently against the perfect sand. The sunrise painted the sky in pinks and golds. It was beautiful. But I felt empty inside, like there was nothing left of me. I hadn't slept at all. Every time I shut my eyes, I heard Lauren's voice shouting, "She's just the maid." I heard Daniel's laughter over and over. I kept going back to that moment, wondering if I could have said something, done something. But deep down I knew. It wasn't about what I did. It was about how they saw me. Disposable. Replaceable. Forgotten. A quiet knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. I opened it and there stood Daniel. He looked awkward but not sorry. "Mom, we're heading to breakfast," he said. "Lauren wants you to watch the kids by the pool after so we can go to the spa." No, good morning. No, how'd you sleep? Not even a mention of what had happened. Just another order wrapped up like a favor. "Daniel," I said quietly, "about last night." He cut me off with a wave of his hand. "Mom, don't make a big deal out of nothing. Lauren was just stressed. You know how she gets when things don't go her way." "Nothing." He called all of that. Nothing. "She called me the maid, Daniel," I said. "She screamed at me. In front of everyone." He looked uncomfortable, wouldn't even meet my eyes. "She didn't mean it like that. Lauren's just dramatic. Can we not do this? We're on vacation." I stared at him, searching for any sign of the boy I once knew. The boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and call them sunshine flowers. But he wasn't there. All that remained was a 47-year-old man who chose his wife's comfort over his mother's dignity. "Fine," I said, though the word tasted like ash. "I'll watch the kids." His relief was obvious. "Perfect. We'll be out most of the day. Spa, then lunch, maybe some shopping. You don't mind, right?" Of course I minded. I came hoping to spend time with them, to feel like part of the family again. But instead I was being treated like the free help. So I nodded. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that keeping the peace often costs more than speaking your mind. The breakfast restaurant was alive with the sound of vacationers chatting over their morning plates. Lauren had already claimed the best table by the big window, acting like she ran the place. Which, in a twist so bitter it was almost funny, she kind of did. Or at least she thought she did. "I want fresh squeezed orange juice, not that processed stuff," she was saying to the waiter, a young guy named Tyler who I instantly recognized from past visits. "And the eggs. Exactly 3 minutes, no more, no less." I'll know if you get it wrong. Tyler nodded politely, but I could see the tension behind his smile. I'd trained my staff to handle demanding guests with grace, but Lauren was pushing even their limits. My grandkids, Ellie, who was 8, and Josh, 10, were already seated at the table, each glued to a tablet, completely lost in their screens. They didn't even glance up when I came over. "Good morning, sweetie," I said to Ellie, reaching over to gently smooth her hair. But Lauren's hand shot out like a snake and stopped mine. "Don't touch her," she barked. "She had her hair done yesterday and I don't want it messed up." I pulled my hand back fast like I'd been stung. Ellie didn't even look up. "Kids, say good morning to Grandma Carol," Daniel mumbled without looking up from his phone. "Morning," they said together, still staring blankly at their screens. I sat down in the only seat left, the one with its back to the ocean. I had made sure the best seats were saved for them, but no one thought to leave me one. "Carol," Lauren said, not even glancing my way, "after breakfast you'll take the kids to the pool. Reapply their sunscreen every hour. Ellie burns easily, and if she turns even the slightest shade of pink, I'll hold you responsible." I nodded and kept my mouth shut, swallowing the words that bubbled in my throat. "Keep them away from the deep end. No snacks by the pool either. Those are full of preservatives. And if they need anything at all, you call me. Don't try to handle it yourself." Every word she spoke felt like a little paper cut to my dignity. It was clear she didn't think I could be trusted to care for my own grandchildren without a full list of rules. "How long will you two be at the spa?" I asked quietly. Lauren finally looked at me. Her eyes were cold. "As long as we feel like. This is our vacation, not yours. You're here to help. Don't forget that." Daniel didn't say a thing. He just scrolled on his phone, completely tuned out. I don't know when he stopped being the boy who loved me, the boy I raised alone, and became this man who watched his wife treat his mother like hired help. After breakfast, I ended up sitting by the pool with Ellie and Josh, trying to strike up conversation, but they barely acknowledged me. Around us, other families were laughing, playing, actually spending time together. We looked like strangers who just happened to share a table. Then suddenly Ellie spoke. "Grandma." My heart jumped. "Yes, honey. Mom says you used to clean houses for rich people. Is that true?" The words felt like a slap. I'd worked every day of my life, but I'd never cleaned houses for anyone. I'd built a hotel business from scratch. I created jobs for hundreds. I earned my place in a world run mostly by men. But somehow in Lauren's version of my life I was a housemaid. "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "I own hotels. I built them." Josh looked up from his tablet for the first time all morning. "Mom says you make up stories about being important because you're embarrassed about being poor." His words knocked the air right out of me. Lauren hadn't just embarrassed me in front of strangers. She had turned my own grandchildren against me. She fed them lies, crafted to make them see me as some sad old woman clinging to fantasy. "I'm not poor," I said, steadying my voice. "And I don't lie about my life." Ellie shrugged. "That's just what Mom says. She says you live in a tiny apartment and pretend to be rich because it makes you feel better." The truth? I lived in a penthouse overlooking the bay, a place worth more than most people's entire portfolios. But my grandkids believed I lived in squalor, inventing stories to feel less pathetic. For 6 straight hours I sat by that pool while Ellie and Josh barely looked my way. Their parents, meanwhile, pampered themselves with spa treatments and gourmet lunches, all paid for with my money. Every once in a while another guest would strike up small talk with me. I smiled, made polite conversation. But inside I felt like I was slowly crumbling. When Daniel and Lauren returned, they were glowing. Her nails were perfect, her hair styled just so. She looked like a woman who had spent the day relaxing, which she had at a spa I paid for in a hotel I owned. "How were the kids?" Daniel asked, already distracted by his phone. "They were fine," I said. What else could I say? That they thought I was a liar and a servant? That their mother had poisoned every chance we had to connect? "Great," Lauren said absently. "You'll have them again tomorrow. We've got golf in the morning, then lunch with some new friends from the spa." Daniel just nodded along, never asking if I minded, never offering me a moment to enjoy the vacation myself. That night, as I sat alone in my room, staring out at the ocean I had fought so hard to own, the truth finally sank in. I wasn't on a family vacation. I was on a work trip. I was the unpaid help, expected to stay out of the way, smile politely, and be useful. The only difference was I was footing the bill for the privilege. But as I sat there listening to the waves crashing outside my window, something began to shift inside me. The pain was still there, maybe deeper than ever. But now it was joined by something stronger. Bigger. The kind of pure, sharp anger that comes when you've been pushed too far for too long. I had been used, lied about, treated like I was worthless, when I was the one who had built everything they were enjoying. The third day started the same as the others, with Lauren barking orders and Daniel nodding along. This time they were planning a day trip to Napa Ridge wine country. And once again I was expected to stay back with the kids. "Lunch is at noon sharp," Lauren said, applying lipstick in the mirror like she was about to perform surgery. "Ellie gets cranky if her blood sugar drops. Keep those granola bars close." I wanted to remind her I had raised a child just fine without her help. But I'd learned that speaking up only earned me more rules and judgment. "We'll probably be back around 6, Daniel said without looking up. "Unless traffic's bad." As they finished getting ready, I overheard Lauren on the phone, her voice full of fake sweetness. "No, I can't do dinner tonight," she was saying. "I'm stuck on grandma duty again." "I know, right? It's ridiculous, but just a few more days. Trust me, once this is sorted out, we'll never have to deal with this again." A chill ran through me. The way she said it, "once this is sorted out," didn't sound like she was talking about the vacation ending. After they left, I brought the kids to the hotel's kids club, a service I'd created myself to give parents more freedom during their stay. The counselors were warm, caring, and within minutes I saw Ellie and Josh actually smile, actually play with other kids. For the first time all week I saw them act like kids again. With a few hours to myself, I decided to take a walk around the resort. I hadn't done that in years, just observed like any other guest without being the owner. I wanted to see how my team was really doing. That's when I stumbled onto the conversation that changed everything. I was passing the pool bar when I heard voices coming from one of the private cabanas. Daniel and Lauren were supposed to be out in wine country. But there they were, tucked behind canvas walls, speaking in low tones with a couple I didn't recognize. "She's getting old," Lauren was saying, "and old people don't live forever, if you know what I mean." A woman laughed. "Lauren, you're awful." "I'm just being practical," she said. "Daniel's an only child, so everything's going to come to us eventually. The only question is how long we'll have to wait." I stopped cold, my heart pounding. I hid behind a palm tree listening. "What about the old lady herself?" a man asked. "Doesn't she have any money?" Then I heard Daniel's voice, my own son's voice, and it froze me in place. "Mom? Oh, he's broke. Lives in this crummy little apartment, barely scrapes by on Social Security. I've been helping her out for years." His lies rolled off his tongue so easily I wondered how long he'd been telling them. I lived in a $3 million penthouse. My monthly earnings from investments were more than most people made in a year. But according to him, I was some helpless old woman living off his charity. "And that's why this whole trip is such a hassle," Lauren added. "We have to drag her everywhere because she can't afford to do anything on her own. It's like having a pitiful stray dog you can't shake off." The other woman made sympathetic noises. "And she'll probably expect you to take care of her when she gets old and sick." Lauren laughed. A nasty sharp sound. "Over my dead body. The second she needs real care, she's going straight to a facility. I'm not turning my house into a retirement home for some useless old woman." I had to grip the palm tree to keep myself from falling. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were planning to throw me away the moment I became a burden. But Daniel's next words? They were what truly broke me. "The sad thing is she still thinks she's important," he said, laughing softly. "She tells these stories about owning hotels like she's some big deal. It's honestly kind of pathetic." "Dementia?" the other man asked. "Maybe," Daniel replied. "Or just desperate to feel like she matters. Either way, it's embarrassing. Yesterday she told the kids she owns hotels. Can you imagine?" Their laughter sliced through me like broken glass. "Well," Lauren added, "at least we won't have to hear her crazy stories much longer. I give her 5 years, 10 at most. Then we'll finally be free. No more pretending we care about some worthless old woman who never did anything." I stood there behind that palm tree, feeling my whole world crack beneath me. These weren't strangers gossiping about a distant relative. This was my son and his wife talking about my death like it was an overdue vacation. "The best part," Lauren went on, "is how grateful she is for any attention. She honestly thinks we brought her here because we wanted her with us. She has no idea we only dragged her along to watch the kids so we could have some fun. More laughter. More casual cruelty. Does she at least help with expenses? The woman asked. Are you kidding? Lauren scoffed. She's worthless financially. Daniel pays for everything. Groceries, utilities, this trip. She's a complete drain. Another lie. I had been covering Daniel's mortgage, his kids' private school, even Lauren's designer shopping sprees. The credit card bills were enormous and they came to my house. But I paid them thinking I was helping my family. The only good thing, Daniel added, is she makes a decent babysitter. Free child care. And she's so desperate for our approval she'll do whatever we ask. It's actually funny, Lauren said. Watching her try so hard to make us love her. Always bringing gifts for the kids, always offering to help. It's pathetic but useful. That was enough. More than enough. I turned away from the cabana, eyes filled with tears I refused to let fall. Not there. Not where they could see me and know I'd heard everything. I made it back to my room before the dam burst. Sitting on the bed, I finally let it hit me. My son, the boy I raised alone after his father died, thought I was a burden he couldn't wait to be rid of. My daughter-in-law, who had smiled at me over 5 years of holidays and family dinners, saw me as nothing but free labor. And my grandchildren, innocent though they were, had been taught I was a liar, a drain. I sat in that hotel room, my hotel room in my hotel paid for with my money and years of work, and realized I had spent decades pouring love and support into people who not only didn't appreciate it but actively resented me for it. The phone rang. Mrs. Whitman, this is Stephanie at the front desk. I hope I'm not disturbing you, but some of the staff mentioned they were worried. Is everything all right? Her voice, warm and genuine, hit something in me. A stranger, an employee really showing me more care than my own family had in years. I'm okay, Stephanie. Thank you. Are you sure? If there's anything we can do, I nearly laughed. The irony. Actually, there is, I said. I'd like a full record of charges on my son's room. Meals, services, incidentals. Everything. There was a pause. Certainly. May I ask what this is regarding? Let's just say I'm seeing things more clearly than I have in a while. I hung up and walked to the window. The sunset lit the sky in brilliant orange and red. It was beautiful. But for once I wasn't just admiring the view, I was planning. My family wanted to treat me like a burden. They were about to find out who I really was. That evening, Daniel and Lauren returned from their so-called wine country trip, flushed from sun and deception. They strolled into the lobby like royalty, oblivious to the fact that I'd heard every vile word. Mom. Daniel called out when he saw me sitting with the kids in the lounge. How was your day? Hope they weren't too much trouble. Yesterday I might have believed that concern. But now I knew better. It was just an act. Part of the performance. They were perfect, I replied calmly. We had a lovely time at the kids' club, didn't we? Ellie and Josh nodded, already drifting toward their parents like magnets. I noticed how they barely looked at me once Daniel and Lauren showed up, as if I'd become invisible. Great, Lauren said, fixing her reflection in her phone camera. We're going to that new seafood place downtown. You don't mind staying in, do you? The kids need to sleep early anyway. It wasn't a question. It never was. Of course, I said. The words tasted bitter. As they got ready to leave me behind, again, I excused myself to make a call. Back in my room, I dialed a number I hadn't used in months. Richard, it's Carol Whitman. Richard Harrison had been my attorney for over 15 years. He was sharp, efficient, and knew my entire hotel portfolio inside and out. If anyone could help, it was him. Carol, what a surprise. How's retirement? I almost smiled. Retirement? I'd stepped back from the daily grind, sure, but I wasn't retired. Richard, I need your advice. Hypothetically, if someone was misusing credit cards tied to my accounts, what could I do legally? He paused. That's very specific for a hypothetical. Are you having a problem? Let's just say I'm reconsidering my financial arrangements. What about family members who've misrepresented their access to funds? If someone's committing credit card fraud under your name, even family, it's a criminal issue. Do you believe that's what's happening? I stared out at the moonlit waves. I'm tired of being taken advantage of. I want to know my options. For the next 30 minutes he laid it out for me. And what he told me was both sobering and empowering. I had more leverage than I'd thought, and Daniel and Lauren had made more mistakes than they realized. After we hung up, I called the front desk. Stephanie, I'd like a full report on my son's family. Every service, every request, every staff interaction since their arrival. Certainly. May I ask why? Let's just say I'm performing a quality audit. Understood. I'll have it ready for you in the morning. Morning came gray and overcast, fitting my mood. I hadn't slept much, but for the first time in days I felt focused. I met Stephanie in her office at 7 a.m. before Daniel and Lauren were even awake. The file she handed me was worse than I'd imagined. Your daughter-in-law has made 17 complaints since check-in, Stephanie said softly. She's asked for room upgrades, special meals, and been harsh with the staff. I flipped through page after page. Lauren had berated a housekeeper about shoe placement, sent back 3 meals, demanded the pool be cleared for her kids. What about my son? I asked. Stephanie's expression didn't change. He's been quieter, but he backed every demand she made. Of course he had. Daniel always made himself look like the reasonable one, while letting Lauren run wild. Stephanie leaned closer. There's something else. Yesterday, when she thought no one was listening, she told another guest the service was fine, but the owners must be some out-of-touch rich family. She said she could run the place better herself. The irony might have made me laugh if it hadn't been so infuriating. Thank you, I said. This is exactly what I needed. On my way back to the elevator, I ran into Tyler, the young waiter from breakfast. He looked nervous. Mrs. Whitman, he said quietly. I hope it's okay I say this, but we've all noticed how your family treats you. I paused. What do you mean? Tyler looked around to be sure we weren't overheard. We know who you are, ma'am. You've always treated us kindly. But watching how they talk to you, like you're nobody, it doesn't sit right with any of us. The loyalty of my employees, people who had no obligation to defend me, touched something deep inside. These were people who respected my leadership and fairness. The contrast with my own family was sharp and painful. Thank you, Tyler. That means more than you know. He nodded. If there's anything we can do, actually there is. Keep giving my son's family excellent service, but I also want everything they say and do documented. Can you handle that? Absolutely. Over the next 2 days I stopped being passive. Instead of silently accepting Lauren's orders and Daniel's indifference, I watched them through the lens of the businesswoman I used to be. Someone who built an empire by reading people's motives and flaws. And what I saw was worse than I'd imagined. Lauren wasn't just entitled, she was mean. I saw her reduce a young housekeeper to tears over how towels were folded. I saw her throw a full-blown tantrum at the pool because service was slow, screaming at a server who was clearly overwhelmed. Daniel wasn't just checked out, he was an enabler. He laughed at Lauren's cruel remarks, joined in on complaints, and treated the very people I employed like they were beneath him. But what pushed me over the edge was how they treated Ellie and Josh. I was watching the kids at the pool when Ellie scraped her knee on the diving board. It was a minor cut, barely bleeding, but she was crying and needed comfort. When Lauren showed up, she didn't even glance at her daughter. She just tore into the lifeguard for not preventing the accident. Then she turned on me. This is your fault, she snapped. If you'd been paying attention instead of daydreaming, this wouldn't have happened. Ellie was still crying and neither of her parents offered comfort. I knelt, cleaned the scrape, and applied a bandage while she leaned against my shoulder, sniffling. It's okay, sweetheart, I whispered. You're very brave. Grandma Carol, she said quietly, why doesn't Mommy like you? That innocent question hit me like a punch. Even an 8-year-old could see it. Before I could answer, Lauren's voice sliced the air. Ellie, get away from her right now. I told you not to get too attached. She won't be around much longer anyway. That cruelty, that blunt dismissal of me and her own child's feelings, was the last straw. That night I made a series of phone calls that would change everything. First, Richard, this time with specific instructions. Then my accountant for full access to my financial records. Finally, Tom Peterson, my general manager, with orders to act immediately. After I hung up the last call, I stared at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me looked older than 72, worn down by days of humiliation. But in her eyes there was something new. Power. And a clear resolve to use it. The next day would be our final full day at the resort, and the most important day of my life in decades. The sun was bright and the sky cloudless, like the perfect beach day from a brochure. But to me the weather felt like a cruel joke. Lauren had gone all out for our farewell dinner. She'd booked the most exclusive private dining room, the one overlooking the ocean where a single night cost more than most people's rent. Of course, she had no idea every penny she was spending came from me, funneled through credit cards I had once foolishly given Daniel access to. "Tonight's going to be perfect," she said over breakfast, her voice full of smug pride. "I invited some of the lovely people we met this week. The Hendersons, the Martins, that couple from Boston." Daniel nodded. "Sounds great. Mom, you'll keep the kids entertained, right? You know how restless they get during adult dinners." Even now, on the last day, I was being dismissed to the children's table while strangers enjoyed a meal at my expense. "Of course," I said, but inside something was hardening. I spent the morning making final preparations. Richard had worked overnight to ensure everything was legally sound. Tom had briefed the key staff. And I had practiced my words in the mirror until I could speak them without shaking. At 3 o'clock the call I was waiting for came. "Mrs. Whitman, this is Detective Morrison from the county sheriff's office. We reviewed the documents. Based on the evidence, we're ready when you are." "Thank you, Detective. I'll let you know when it's time." The rest of the afternoon crawled by. Lauren spent hours perfecting her look, turning herself into a vision of elegance. Daniel pressed his shirt and shined his shoes, rehearsing his role as the successful husband. Neither of them asked how I was or if I needed anything. In their minds I didn't matter. At 7 o'clock sharp, we arrived at the Sunset Terrace, the crown jewel of the resort. The space was breathtaking with floor-to-ceiling windows, a private balcony for ocean views, crystal chandeliers and elegant linens. I had designed every detail myself, from the murals to the marble. This was meant to be a place where guests created beautiful memories. Tonight it would serve another purpose. Our guests were already seated, 6 well-dressed couples, clearly charmed by Lauren's performance over the past week. They greeted us warmly, but I noticed most of their attention went to Daniel and Lauren. I received polite nods, nothing more. "Everyone, this is Daniel's mother," Lauren said, gesturing to me with the enthusiasm one might show an umbrella stand. "She's been helping with the kids this week." The conversation flowed as plates arrived one after another. Lauren reigned over the table like royalty, sharing stories of their travels and plans. Daniel played along, smiling and adding details to support the illusion. I sat at the end with Ellie and Josh, cutting their food, keeping them entertained while the adults socialized. Whenever the children spoke up or asked questions, Lauren shot me sharp looks as though their behavior was my fault. "Carol," she said during a lull, loud enough for everyone to hear, "could you take the kids out to the balcony? They're getting a bit restless." It was the moment I had waited for, a public dismissal with a full audience. I stood slowly, folded my napkin with care and walked to the head of the table. Lauren, seated like a queen in borrowed glamour, didn't realize her kingdom was crumbling. "Actually, Lauren," I said, my voice steady and clear, "I think it's time we had an honest conversation." The room fell quiet. Lauren looked up, annoyed. "What are you talking about? I asked you to take the children outside." "I know what you asked," I said, stepping behind her chair, "just like I know about your conversation at the pool 3 days ago, where you talked about how long I have left to live, and how happy you'll be when I'm gone." Her face went pale, but she laughed, brittle and forced. "I don't know what you're talking about. You must have misunderstood." "Did I misunderstand when you called me a worthless old woman? Or when you said I'd be dumped in a facility the moment I became inconvenient? Or maybe when my son laughed about how delusional I am for claiming to own businesses?" Daniel's face was frozen, part shock, part rising panic. Around the table, guests shifted uncomfortably, wishing they were anywhere else. "Mom," Daniel said, voice tight, "maybe we should talk privately." "Oh, I think we've had enough of that," I said, eyes still locked on Lauren. "It's time for some public truth." I pulled a thick folder from my purse. The papers inside rustled loud in the tense silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said to the table, "allow me to introduce myself properly. My name is Carol Whitman. I am the owner and founder of Whitman Hospitality Group." Gasps echoed around the table. One woman covered her mouth in shock. "This hotel, the Ocean View Resort, is one of 17 properties I own," I said. "The meals you've eaten, the rooms you've stayed in, the staff who've served you, All of it is mine. Lauren's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Daniel had gone completely pale, frozen in place. For the past week, I continued, my voice growing stronger, I've been humiliated, belittled, and treated like hired help by my own son and his wife. They told you, my grandchildren, and anyone who'd listen, that I'm a delusional old woman who makes up stories about success. I opened the folder. Here's the deed to this hotel. My corporate registration. Financial statements confirming my net worth. $47 million. And this, I said, holding up one more paper, is a record of every charge Daniel and Lauren made on the credit cards I provided them, because I believed I was helping family who loved me. Silence. Even the children had stopped fidgeting, sensing the weight of the moment. $68,000, I said. Spa treatments, shopping, fine dining, luxury trips, all charged to my accounts while they told people I was broke and dependent. Lauren found her voice first. Norma, please let me explain. Explain what? I cut her off. Explain how you screamed at my staff, called me a maid, and told them not to speak to me? How you spent years poisoning my grandchildren against me? How you planned to dump me in a state facility the moment I became inconvenient? Daniel's voice shook. Mom, we can work this out. This is just a misunderstanding. I looked at my son, the boy I raised alone, the man I had supported and loved for 47 years. No, Daniel. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is what you wanted. A mother who was grateful for scraps of attention, who gave you free money and free babysitting without ever asking for respect. I pulled out my phone. Detective Morrison? It's Carol Whitman. I'm ready. The reaction was instant. Lauren jumped up, knocking over her wine glass. Red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like blood. You called the police? She screamed. On your own family? I called the police on people who defrauded me, I replied. Being related doesn't make it legal. Daniel stood, hands shaking. Mom, think about what you're doing. Think of the children. They don't deserve to see their parents arrested. You should have thought of them, I said coldly, before teaching them to hate their grandmother. Before deciding their inheritance mattered more than their relationship with me. Guests around the table were collecting their things, eager to escape the scene. I didn't blame them. This wasn't their mess. As they left with awkward smiles and hollow words, Lauren made one final desperate attempt. You're making a huge mistake, she hissed, her perfect face twisted with rage. We're your family. You'll be alone forever. I looked at her. This woman who'd spent 5 years destroying my relationship with my son and grandchildren, and felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Lauren, I said softly, I've been alone for years. The difference is now I'm choosing it. Footsteps echoed in the hallway as Detective Morrison and his partner entered the dining room. Their presence shrank Lauren and Daniel, the confident, entitled couple replaced by frightened, cornered figures. Mrs. Whitman, the detective said respectfully, are these the individuals you wish to press charges against? I looked at my son, searching for some flicker of remorse. There was none. Just cold hatred. You vindictive old bitch, he snarled. You're destroying this family over money. And right then I knew I was doing the right thing. The legal process moved quickly. Richard had built the case so thoroughly that Daniel and Lauren's attorney, paid for ironically with my money, urged them to take a plea deal. The charges of financial elder abuse and credit fraud carried serious penalties, but the real punishment was public exposure. Within a week the story was everywhere. Hotel heiress uncovers family fraud during vacation, read the headline in the business section. The article painted an accurate, devastating picture of how a successful woman had been systematically used and betrayed by her own son and daughter-in-law. I didn't do interviews. I didn't need to. The facts said enough. Daniel and Lauren were banned from all Whitman hospitality properties. Their cards were canceled, access to my accounts revoked, and I stopped paying their mortgage. Within a month, they sold their home and moved into a small apartment across town. But the worst fallout wasn't financial, it was social. Their country club membership, which I had funded, was revoked. The private school where Ellie and Josh were enrolled demanded overdue tuition or withdrawal. Friends who had dined and traveled on my dime suddenly became unavailable when Lauren or Daniel called. I watched it all from the peace of my penthouse and felt only relief. 3 months later I received a letter. The return address was Daniel's apartment. The handwriting, shaky and desperate, was Lauren's. "Dear Carol," it began. "We hope you can forgive us. We've learned our lesson. The children miss you. Daniel realizes how wrong he was. Please give us another chance to be the family you deserve." I read it twice, then folded it and filed it away next to the court documents. It wasn't an apology, it was a tactic. Just another way to tap into my resources now that theirs had dried up. The real Daniel, the one who called me a vindictive old woman, had already shown himself. This letter only confirmed that neither of them had changed. They had just run out of options. I never wrote back. Instead, I built the life I should have had years ago. I sold 2 smaller properties and used the money to launch the Whitman Foundation, a nonprofit devoted to preventing elder abuse and supporting seniors abandoned by their families. Our headquarters took up the top floor of my newest hotel in downtown Tampa, and I threw myself into the work like I hadn't in years. The foundation became my true family. Dr. Patricia Chin, our medical director, was the daughter I never had. James Sullivan, our legal lead, reminded me of the kind of man Daniel could have been. Maria Rodriguez, who ran our support groups, had lived through her own family's betrayal and knew exactly how this kind of pain feels. Together, we helped dozens of seniors reclaim dignity, purpose, and peace. We offered legal support, financial advice, and, most importantly, a community that understood that real family isn't about blood. It's about love, loyalty, and respect. My grandchildren remained a quiet ache in my heart. But time softened that pain. Ellie and Josh were still young. Maybe the damage wasn't permanent. I set up trust funds for their college education, administered by the foundation. If they reached out when they turned 18 knowing the truth, I'd welcome them with open arms. If not, they'd still have what I always wanted to give them: stability and a future. A year after that dinner at the Ocean View Resort, I had an unexpected visitor. Stephanie, my former front desk manager, now promoted to general manager, called and asked if she could visit. We sat on my balcony overlooking the bay. "Mrs. Whitman," she said, "the staff has never forgotten what happened that week. The way your family treated you and how you handled it became a legend here." I smiled, thinking of Tyler and the others who had stood by me. "They're good people," I said. "Better than I had at home." "There's more," Stephanie added. "We've had inquiries from people who heard about the foundation." Guests began reaching out, asking if we offered support programs for people dealing with family abuse. That idea sparked our most impactful initiative, the Reclaim Your Life retreats, week-long stays at Ocean View Resort combining luxury, therapy, legal help, and peer support. Survivors of elder or financial abuse could come heal in the same space where I had finally fought back. The dining room where Lauren and Daniel tried to humiliate me became a sanctuary for people reclaiming their dignity. The pool where I'd overheard their cruel plans became a place of renewal. But nothing compared to what happened 2 years later. I was reviewing applications for our scholarship program when one name stopped me cold: Josh Whitman. My grandson, now 13, had written an essay about wanting to study business and hospitality. He'd researched my career and wrote in shaky teenage handwriting, "I know my parents hurt you. I was too young then, but I know the truth now. I want to make things right. I want to build something like you did." Tears streamed down my face. He hadn't come for money. He'd come for truth. I called the number on his application. "Josh, this is your grandmother." The pause on the line stretched long. Then came his voice, "Grandma Carol? I didn't know if you'd want to talk to me." "Sweetheart," I said, already crying, "I've wanted to talk to you every day for 2 years." We talked for hours. Josh told me about the divorce. Daniel and Lauren hadn't survived the fallout. He lived mostly with his dad now, who, he said, was finally beginning to understand the damage he'd done. Ellie was still confused but starting to ask questions. I didn't demand apologies. I just listened to Josh's stories, his school life, his dreams. When he asked to visit, I said yes instantly. Seeing Josh walk into my penthouse was one of the happiest moments of my life. Taller than I remembered, with Daniel's hair but gentler eyes. We spent hours going through photo albums. I told him about his grandfather, the hotels, the journey. "I'm sorry we hurt you," he said. "I should have known better." I hugged him tight. "You were just a kid. None of this was your fault." 5 years later, I wake up in my penthouse feeling grateful. Josh visits every weekend, working part-time at the foundation. Ellie calls now and then, cautious but reaching out. On my 77th birthday, Daniel sent a letter. It was sincere. No requests, no excuses, just a hope that someday I'd be willing to see him. I haven't decided. Trust that broken takes time. But Josh gives me hope. Josh told me Lauren moved out of state and remarried. She hasn't contacted the kids or me, probably for the best. Some people are toxic and the healthiest choice is to let them go. Ocean View Resort thrives under Stephanie's leadership. The foundation has helped over 2,000 seniors reclaim their lives. I still walk through the lobby where I once felt small. Now I feel powerful. It's the place where I finally stood up for myself and stopped accepting cruelty just because it came from family. The biggest thing I've learned? We teach people how to treat us. For years I allowed Daniel and Lauren to take without respect. I believed love meant endless patience. But when I set boundaries, things changed, slowly but permanently. At 77, I've never been happier. I'm surrounded by people who value me. I sleep peacefully and wake up with purpose. I've learned that being alone doesn't mean being lonely, and sometimes the family you build is better than the one you're born into. Daniel and Lauren thought they were teaching me a lesson. And they did. I learned I'm worth standing up for, even if I'm the only one doing it. That changed everything. Now I'm curious about you. What would you have done? Have you lived through something like this? Share below. And before you go, check out the stories on screen. They're channel favorites and I think you'll love them. Subscribe. Thanks for watching.